Alright, this is my second attempt with Algebra 1, Advanced Algebra 1, 5th period. It would not clear up a minute ago. It was all broken. My Wi-Fi was acting crazy. I'm going to see if I can see this now. Alright, hang on for just a minute. I gotta bring up the video on my class page to see if it's fuzzy or not. Alright, I believe it's clear. We'll try it this time and see if this works. Still looks like it might be a little fuzzy. As I said in the other video that I had to delete, we are solving quadratic equations by using the square roots today in Advanced Algebra 1. We've already solved quadratic equations by factoring, using the zero product property. And in the last couple of lessons, we were looking at graphs of quadratic functions. And if you'll remember back to whenever we were talking about the parabolas, I told you that where the parabola crossed the x-axis at the x-intercepts, those were the solutions to your quadratic equation. And so that's why it's important to solve quadratic equations, is so you'll know what your x-intercepts are on your parabola. So like I said, we've already solved by factoring. Today we're going to solve by taking square roots. Then we're going to solve two other ways in our next lessons. This still looks a little fuzzy, but we'll see if you can see it. Hey, Brittany. I'm going to go ahead and try this. I was on here once earlier and it never would clear up. So I had to delete the video and start over, and it still looks a little broken to me, but I think you can see it. Alright, solving quadratic equations using square roots. This is a super duper easy lesson. And then enjoy it, because the next lesson is not so simple. Make sure on the next lesson that you're watching live. Alright, example 1. This problem right here is basically how all your problems are going to look. It just varies a little. But you're going to start out with something like u squared equals 144. This whole lesson is preparing you for our next two lessons on different methods to solve that are a little bit more complicated, but you always end with like x squared equals something or u squared equals something. And so that's why we were going to go over how to solve using square roots. So if you're looking at example 1, it says solve for u squared equals 144. So remember, you're trying to figure out what u is, what you can plug in right there to square it and get 144. Well, that's easy. But like I said, you still need to know the process of solving it, because we're going to be using this process in upcoming lessons. So anytime you're solving for the variable and that variable is squared, we've got to get rid of that power of 2. So we've got to take the square root to make that square cancel out and just find the u. So just like if you're solving for a variable in any equation, you always do the opposite operation that's being performed on that to find your answer. So like the u is being squared here, so we're going to do the opposite operation to solve for u, and that's taking the square root of it. And then in an equation, if you do something to one side, you've got to do it to the other side. So if we take the square root of this side, we've got to also take the square root of the right side. Now when you take the square root of u to the second, we've talked about this before, you just half your exponent. And in other words, the square root cancels out the little exponent 2, always. They cancel each other out, because squaring a number is exactly opposite of taking the square root. So you'll be left with u on the left side. Now on the right side, when you are solving an equation by taking the square root, you're always going to get a positive and negative answer. Well, most cases. I'll show you one later where you only get one answer. But in most cases, you're always going to get a plus and a negative answer. Because whenever you square a number, you can square the positive or the negative and still get the same answer. So like 12 squared is 144, and negative 12 squared is also 144. So when you take the square root of 144, you put plus or minus 12. And that's your answer, except IXL wants you to enter it as two completely separate numbers. So that means u equals 12 or negative 12. And that's all that plus or minus symbol means in front of your 12. You need to get in the habit of always doing plus or minus when you take the square root to solve an equation. All right, example 2. We're going to solve for r. So this time you've got r squared minus 10 equals 71. You're not ready to take the square root yet to get r, because you've got to get rid of this minus 10 that's over here on the same side with r squared. So we're going to add 10 to the other side. You add it to this side too, and it makes it cancel out. I'm just not going to show my work there. And so you have r squared equals 71 plus 10, which is 81. And now, since you're left with r squared by itself over here, you're ready to take the square root of both sides. So you say the square root on both sides, which is going to leave you with r equals plus or minus the square root of 81, which is 9. And then when you enter that, it's just going to be r equals 9 or negative 9. And I think you put, it may have two separate blanks for your answers. If it doesn't have two separate blanks, you'll just separate them with a comma, but just read your directions. Hey Jillian. Hey Alyssa. This is Advanced Algebra 1. I already did 6th and 7th period of Algebra 1. The video still should be on the Facebook page. And then Jillian, Algebra 2 will be coming up after this one. Alright, moving on to example 3. We're going to solve for x. So example 3a is very similar to the one that we did in example 2. We have x squared plus 12 equals 181. I don't know why my 181 looks weird. But we need to subtract the 12 to get x squared by itself. So I'm going to come over here and subtract 12. And that leaves me with x squared equals 181 minus 12 is going to be, let's see, 11 minus 2 is 9, 169. And so now you want to solve for x by taking the square root of both sides. So the square root of x squared is equal to x. The square root of 169 is going to be plus or minus 13. And so then you would just say x equals 13 or negative 13. All right, in part B, I went back to just a plain old equation that you don't have to do any work with except take the square root, just so you can make sure you see the difference. Part B is x squared equals 225. There's nothing to add or subtract, so you're ready to take the square root. When you take the square root of this left side, you get x. When you take the square root of the right side, don't forget it's always plus or minus, and then that's going to be 15, because 15 times 15 is 225. So your answer is going to be positive 15 or negative 15. Isn't that easy? Most of the problems are like this. You are going to have some that are like this next one that we're about to do that ask you how many solutions instead of asking you what the solution is. Alright, let's see. Example 4. Now see how this one's written? It says, how many real solutions does the equation have? And it gives you n squared equals 49. Now I want to explain something to make sure you understand the question that it's asking you. When you have a quadratic equation and you're taking the square root, like x squared equals 9, and you're taking the square root to get your answer, x is going to equal plus or minus whatever the square root of 9 is. And the number under this radical to get real solutions has to be positive, because you can't take the square root of a negative number. So like you're going to get 3 or negative 3 on this. There's 2 real solutions. But if the number under the square root was a negative number, like negative 16. Now my Algebra 2 students know how to do this because it involves imaginary numbers. But there's not anything that you can multiply to get a negative 16. 4 times 4 is positive 16. Negative 4 times negative 4 is also positive 16. You can't take two exact numbers and multiply them and get a negative 16. Therefore, there are no real solutions to that. Now, there are imaginary solutions that you'll learn about in Algebra 2, but there are no real solutions. So every one of these problems that you're doing, like the square root of 16 is going to equal a positive or negative 4, there's two real solutions on all these, unless the number's negative. If the number is negative under the radical, there are no real solutions. Now, there's one other case if you get a 0. What is the square root of 0? It's not plus or minus 0, it's just 0. So there's only one solution if there's a 0 under that radical. And so that's what they want you to understand in these examples. Like back to example 4, how many real solutions does the equation have? And the equation is n squared equals 49. Well, as long as this number right here, that n squared is set equal to, is positive, it's always going to have 2 real solutions. So this answer would be B, 2 real solutions. The only time you're going to get none or no real solutions is if that number's negative. And the only time you're going to get 1 real solution is if that number's 0. So let's look at example 5. How many real solutions? Well, before you can answer it, you don't just look at your 83, because in this equation, you've got to do a little work first. You've got to subtract the 89. But now when you subtract 89 over here, you're going to get a negative number. You're going to end up with w squared equals negative 6. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. And so, because you end up with a negative number, you would have, it doesn't matter what the number is, just because it's negative, you're going to have no real solutions. Look at example 6. Again, you've got to do some work before you can answer. And I didn't put the multiple choice answers on here like it has on all the IXL problems. I did it on these two, and then just to save time, I didn't put it on these last ones. How many real solutions? So we're going to subtract 10. Now, you already had a negative, and so if you subtract from a negative, you're just going to add those and keep your negative sign. So you get x squared equals negative 20. So again, you can stop there. You don't have to worry about taking the square root. You've just got to say that because it's negative, there are no real solutions. So I'm going to put none. And then on example 7, one more time, it's just like it. We're going to add 15 to the right side because, whoops, I left off my square right here. That should be x squared minus 15. And so x squared minus 15, we're going to add 15 to the other side. Now negative 15 plus 15 equals 0 when you add those. So you get x squared equals 0. Now, how many solutions? When you take the square root of 0, you just get one answer. You just get 0. So it's one real solution. And on IXL, it's multiple choice. And that's all there is to this lesson. Oh, it just went blurry. Really blurry. Brittany, are you still with me? Let me see if I can move this around to get that. Crap. Maybe if I move back, maybe I'm having some type of magnetism in me today. Are you here, Brittany? Oh, it's coming back. All right, well, maybe on that last one, you heard me explain it. You can see that if, when you, have negative 15 and positive 15, you get 0 over here. So if you have x squared equals 0, you're going to get one real solution. Your assignment is Algebra 1, BB6. And you need to get a SMART score of 80. This would probably be a good one to get to 100 on. Okay, I think it cleared up so y'all can see that. Alright, I will see y'all next time. Everybody watch live next time because it's going to be a pretty hard lesson. Take care. See y'all later.